Hey everybody, welcome back to the Amateur Expert Show. This is episode 9, and today I'll have Nick Lombardi on, and he is the owner of OneSource, and he is in, so I'm going to add him so he can introduce himself.
Hello.
Hello, how are we doing, Nick?
Doing great. How are you?
Good, thank you. Welcome to the Amateur Expert Show.
Thank you.
So glad to have you on. So I just gave a brief introduction. If you could please introduce yourself to the crew.
Sure. So my name is Nick Lombardi. I'm the founder and president of OneSource here in Wallingford, Connecticut. We are a regional facility management company handling all types of corporate real estate. That's kind of my professional background. Born and raised in Connecticut, went to Notre Dame High School in West Haven, went to Marist College in Poughkeepsie, New York, and here I am.
Here you are.
Yeah.
So tell me this, Nick, when you were younger, what did you want to be when you grew up?
So I actually, I interned at a law firm in high school, and I hated it.
Did
so
you?
I had always wanted to be a lawyer, but I found it to be extremely boring.
Okay.
Had to do a lot of reading, a lot of research, and it just wasn't my style. So the first thing I learned was what I didn't want to be.
Nice.
And then I kind of developed an interest naturally in real estate, and had no idea what I wanted to do in the real estate world.
Okay.
And then kind of found my niche from there.
So at that point in your life, what was your idea of success?
My idea of success, basically from just being raised in a family where my mom has 3 brothers, so my grandfather and my 3 brothers and her 3 brothers all own businesses.
Okay.
So they all had small businesses. My dad's dad also owned beauty parlors in the Westville area. So I think being a small business owner, having flexibility of your schedule, working a lot, and I saw that, but my opinion of success then through them was working for yourself.
Okay, that's great.
Yeah.
So tell me how you sort of found your way to OneSource, owning and starting your own business.
Sure. So, like I said, I had developed an interest in real estate. A friend of mine, her name's Tina, her dad, Paul, gave me a book when I was in high school called Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
I've read that.
Yeah, a lot of Robert Kiyosaki disciples out there. And he talked about investing in real estate and basically the financial side, but which got me interested. Then
Okay.
I have an uncle, Lou Proto is his name. He owns the Proto Group in North Haven. That was a commercial broker. So once I learned that he was in real estate, I would inundate him with questions. And in high school, I worked at a paving company in construction, and found myself being on a job site where we were paving the parking lot, of like a Walgreens, and he would show up with a group of guys in a car and walk around, and I was always wondering what they were doing. So I found myself,
who are those guys?
Yeah, who are those guys? Why are they here? And badgering him with questions just about the real estate world. So I got my real estate license when I was in college. I was 19. I was studying business. Sorry about that. I was studying business, and
It's okay.
And I got a degree in business entrepreneurship. And my senior year of college, I did a couple of real estate deals that kind of put me on the map with one of the board members of Marist, where I went. And I graduated in 2007. The economy was not good. And this board member of the college said, "Hey, I don't know if you know anything about the facility management industry, but I bought a company out of the Enron bankruptcy. We have 2 customers, ExxonMobil and Blockbuster Video, and I'd like you to come work here." Uncle Lou's business at the time was very slow. I was going to go work for him. And I took this job working for a national maintenance company and developed an interest in facility services, kind of related to real estate and construction, and went from there. So kind of an interesting path, definitely not the path I thought I was going to go down. So OneSource provides on a regional level construction management services, real estate brokerage, just like I learned through my uncle, and the facility management side, which basically is people that own a portfolio, healthcare, financial services, nonprofit. We go in and we manage all their sites, whether it's a HVAC contractor, a roofer, an electrician, a landscaper, a plumber. We coordinate all those services for them.
So what made you decide to open up your own business? Because at the time you were working for a company that sort of did what OneSource is doing on a small scale.
Yeah.
So what gave you the courage, or what was the insight, or what made you say, you know what, I don't want to do this anymore. I'm going to open up my own company.
One of the things, I was traveling a lot. So I had a national sales territory. So I was always on an airplane. And I think that I wanted to be a little bit closer to home. And I kind of looked around at what local companies were doing for their facilities. And I found that most companies just had an in-house department, and they would call a national company like JLL or CBRE or Cushman, and they would say, well, you guys are too small. You have 40 locations, you have 50 locations. We want you to be national. Right. And it was through kind of that, looking at the Northeast and understanding that these companies were a mid-market customer that wasn't being served. So it kind of identified a niche for me.
Perfect.
Yeah.
So now that you've got OneSource up and running and you're doing great work, has your idea of success changed? And if so, why?
Well, I think my idea of success, now that I have we've got a growing team of people. So we're up to 12 employees. We've got 70 subcontractors. I think that, I think your goals change. I think in a lot of ways, I am successful. I have my own schedule. But you know what? You're always working for somebody. I think I learned that. So I work for the customer every single day, and customer satisfaction is key. So, unless you're doing something completely in a vacuum, you're always working for somebody in some way, shape, or form. And I think that, my goal now is to kind of look at other services we can provide and how we can grow geographically into new markets.
That's great.
Does that answer
so
your
can
question?
you share with us some tips? It does. But I should ask you this before I ask for your tips. When you started, what was your company size? Because someone could be listening or may watch later and say, I have an idea of a company I want to start, but it's just me or me and a friend or whatever the case may be. So what was your company size when you first started, or how did you decide to start?
I incorporated on March 25th, 2013, employee of one. It was just me and out there with a cell phone and trying to figure out how to drum up business. And I hired my first employee of September of that year. And I basically took a startup loan to start and borrowed some money. And the first full year I was in business, I basically worked off of a business loan. And it was one of the hardest things I've ever done, because you're spending every day, and psychologically you're not earning, but you owe the money back. So I think you have to kind of say that this is temporary. I know that I'll be able to. I believe in myself. I believe in the service. I believe in the opportunity. And you have to get up every day, no matter what, and give it a go. Changes
Awesome.
your
Thank you for
perspective
sharing that.
sure. Yeah, you're welcome.
Okay, so now I want to know, what tips and motivators did you use? Because sometimes, I love my job, but sometimes, it's hard to wake up and go. So what are some tips and motivators that you use to get yourself going?
Well, here's one thing, because you just talked about your job. One of the things I actually wish I did was stay in the industry working for somebody else longer. I think I would have learned a lot more about the industry. I think I would have made better connections, especially because I already was in the space that I wanted to be in. It wasn't like I was working in an unrelated industry and wanted to make a shift. So I think that's one thing, was I was so anxious to start that I probably could have done things a little bit differently. But so just repeat that part of your question.
Some tips and motivators you use along the way in your career.
Yeah, one thing I do is I have an advisory board. So there are people that I go to in my network to ask them for opinion and advice. And one of my friends, Denny Stanek, literally the first 2 years I was in business, called me every day at 7 o'clock in the morning just to make sure I wasn't in bed.
Nice.
And because you know what, some days are hard. Some days are really, really hard. And I didn't realize he was doing it quite at first. And some days I wasn't in bed. I mean, it's hard. But I think that talking to people, asking questions, listening, talking to people that have been there before. I think one of the things I've learned is you can't take advice from people that aren't where you want to be or don't have the same goals as you, because their perspective is different.
That's so good.
And one of the things that my father taught me, I remember a couple of years out of college, I asked my dad a question, and he said to me, "I can't answer that question for you because I've never been in your shoes before." And for my dad, I was like, "Well, Dad, I ask you everything. How could you not know the answer to this question?" And it was a very eye-opening experience where he goes, "Listen, you have exceeded my level of understanding, and you need to ask somebody else who's qualified or is where you want to be."
That's so good.
That's the biggest thing I think I can say about that.
That is so good. And also, it's awesome that your dad was aware and humble enough to say that, because some people will just give you advice, blind advice.
That's right.
That's fantastic. So this went faster than I thought it would. But I feel as though you've answered all of my questions. So let me ask you this about your advisory board. How did you go about choosing who would be on it? And then how did you go about approaching those people?
So some people were, cross between business and family, like my Uncle Lou, like I mentioned him early on, as a person who I value his values and the fact that I trust him, and he's in the real estate world. Mm-hmm. Other folks, hi Isabel. Isabel is saying hi.
Hi, Isabel.
I think other folks were like people like Denny Stanek, that's in a totally different industry, but like I mentioned before, he called me every day. Lindsay Matthew does graphic design and marketing for us, and I met her years ago when she was a marketing director at an engineering company, and just kind of, I think that connecting the dots and building good relationships was the key to building a good advisory board. And I've got some great people that I've met along the way. Christy Ferguson, who was the
I think we might have lost him. Let's try getting him back in.
I got kicked off.
Welcome back.
I got kicked off. I don't know what happened.
It's okay. We had a quick commercial break.
So talking about the advisory board, talking about Christy Ferguson, who was Chief Strategy Officer at Edible Arrangements, built them from 10 locations up to probably over 1,600 units. She's on my advisory board. So really,
did you know these people personally first, or did you, were they in your network and you just sort of said, "Hey, my name is Nick Lombardi and I'm looking to open up a company. Would you be in my advisory board?"
All the people or people that I had met through other people. So I had networked my way, built relationships with them. They already knew me, knew about me. It wasn't anyone that I called up blindly and said, "Hey, do you want to be on my advisory board?" People that understood what I was trying to do, the type of person that I am, and already had a certain level of trust. Because when you ask someone to basically vouch for you, and as a startup company, you're going out into a world where you're asking large organizations to trust that you're going to do a good job for them. That's a
Right.
big risk. That's a big risk. So having credibility, having a track record, having people on your advisory board that can say, hey, as a reference, Nick's the guy for the job here. I tell a story about working for Ulbrich Steel. And if anyone watches my podcast, I'm going to do a little plug for my Game Changer
Absolutely.
podcast.
Plug your podcast.
Follow me on hashtag Nick's Game Changer. But anyway, Chris Ulbrich, Ulbrich family is a legend as far as I'm concerned in the community, greater Wallingford area.
Okay.
And I sat next to Chris at a dinner. I was pretty much brand new in business, and he was asking me a million questions about what I did and found some commonalities and hired me to build a warehouse on one of his properties in North Haven.
Oh, wow.
And he totally had faith in me, and it was like I wasn't going to let him down. And we did a great job. And Chris, along the way, has become a great asset and a great friend and a great reference. So I think, especially when you're starting your own business, all you have is your reputation. And if you follow through and you do what you say you can do, people are going to listen, people are going to trust you, and your business is going to grow. So organic growth for me has really been the key.
So I think what I also heard you say is being able to sell yourself.
No question about it.
So because if you didn't have your elevator pitch, or, if you weren't able to have sound answers to the questions that he had during that dinner, he might not have ever called you.
Correct.
So
right.
Having the network, but also being able to have the confidence and the wherewithal to sell yourself so that people know who you are. And then
right.
the last part would be being able to follow through.
Absolutely.
With what you're selling yourself to do or be.
Having confidence that you're going to be able to pull it off, and always not knowing, but that's a huge part of it for sure.
That's amazing. So then my last question, Nick, would be for you to share with me a random tidbit of information. I am the amateur expert and claim to know a little bit about a lot. And so I've already learned a lot from you today, but I'd like just one random tidbit of information that I can just put in my pocket.
A random tidbit about me personally, or about business, or about just life in general?
Life in general, business, anything that you think would be like a Snapple fact, just any random tidbit of information that, the next time I'm watching Jeopardy, I might be able to answer 200 level question.
So I have to tell you that, first of all, my sister-in-law, Paige, is the Jeopardy expert. And that's a little tidbit that's probably useless, but she wins every time. So
no way.
Paige, if you're out there watching, you got to go on Jeopardy. I think that, I think I'm gonna give you a piece of advice.
Okay.
That a friend of mine gave me. I'll talk about my friend Paul Bracone again. And he passed on. So this is an important one because it's good advice. He said to me a long, long time ago, you can convince yourself into doing something as easily as you can convince yourself out of doing something. Mm-hmm. So don't overanalyze it. Don't overthink it. Make the decision and figure out how to go from there. And that, to me, if that's considered a tidbit, those are words to live by. That
is outstanding. And it's so true. So true.
Yeah.
Thank you, Nick, and thank you, Paul. And this is great. So I would like for you now to share with the folks your information. Where can they find you? You said hashtag Nick's Game Changer. If they are needing any project management work or real estate, if they have real estate questions, where can they find you guys on the web or Instagram?
Yeah, you can find us on Instagram at onesourcecompanies.com. You can find us on LinkedIn, One Source Companies, onesourcecompanies.com. There's an easy way to fill out information and get to me. So we're on all social media. All of our marketing and advertising is all done digitally at this point, which we think is obviously, as you know, Ash is the way of the future here. Totally. So I think that I'm pretty easily accessible. I pride myself on always getting back to people. So please don't hesitate to reach out. And I really appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you for being on. I appreciate it. And this was fantastic. Thank you so much, Nick. This will be on YouTube later on tonight. So I'll send you the link so that you can share it with your folks. And this is great.
Thanks, Ashley. Talk to you soon.
Thank you so much. Okay.
You got it.
Okay, bye-bye.